The world of Edena and why it's so cool. Before we can talk about the world of Edena, we need to talk about who wrote it. The author is this man, Jean Giraud, better known by his pseudonym Moebius. Moebius is a French comic book artist who has worked on Heavy Metal Magazine, Dune, Silver Surfer with Stan Lee, Tron, The Fifth Element, Alien, and surprisingly Space Jam. So whether you've heard about him or not, he's a big deal. One of his first comics was a Western starring the character Blueberry, which was later turned into some movies. He also worked on Incal, which is also currently being turned into a movie directed by Taika Waititi. He's also worked on a bunch of other stuff, but now that I've established his credibility, let me talk about the world of Edena. It was published in segments like most comics, so the different covers are all the same book. The compiled version is a fat 360-page comic book that was originally commissioned by a car company. In 1938, Citroën commissioned a 7-page ad for Moebius. But why? Citroën is the same company that lit up the Eiffel Tower in 1925 for an elaborate marketing stunt, so the reason they commissioned a comic is probably ridiculous and doesn't matter. And also French people love their comics. Moebius suspected that the real reason Citroën wanted a comic was that the man in charge was a huge comic book lover, and that a man like that would be delighted to be in control of the production and distribution of a Moebius comic. After much thought, Moebius agreed to do the comic for several reasons, which I quote, "Citroën was not like other car companies. They're like the poets of popular automobiles. And it's such a mythical car." So Sur le Toit or Upon a Star was born. Upon a Star is the first chapter in the world of Edena, consisting of 87 pages, featuring the mythical Citroën car and a charming alien with a lisp. What more could you want? Beautiful drawings of your product, strategically placed information about your product, and the same alien with a lisp that I mentioned a second ago. He's so cute. You probably want to hear about the other 273 pages. I'll get there. It started out as a 7-page assignment. Moebius managed to cut it down to a 4-page story because what if he wasn't inspired? Then slightly smaller to a 3-page story because maybe he just didn't want to do it. When he sat down to draw it, he managed to cut the assignment down to a mere 87 pages. Citroën was delighted. They turned their 7-page ad into a deluxe limited edition hardcover book with 5 exciting chapters, which altogether were The World of Edena. If the simple existence of the book isn't cool enough for you, what about the art? The World of Edena has a specific style. Moebius wanted to cut his drawings down to just their lines and described the style as deliberately simple. Whatever the heck that means. But it's true. The art in the World of Edena is incredibly simple compared to his other work. Moebius has one of the most recognizable styles in my opinion. He uses a combination of complex, natural-looking shapes and lines, and the combination of contour lines, stippling, hatching, which all provide some serious depth. Contour lines are lines that follow a shape, and stippling is many dots and dashes, and hatching is a sort of crisscross grid often used to create shadows. His excessive detail is also easily recognizable. Example of its hatching, where it creates a shadow on his eyes and the texture on his coat. And this one is a beautiful example of his natural yet complex line work. The drawing looks like it's alive. How does it all compare to the World of Edena, though? This drawing may look very detailed, but he's holding himself back. Notice how he didn't draw every single leaf or blade of grass, or every ding, scratch, or dent on this machinery. This pyramid here is simplicity at its finest, just blue. This image could be so much more detailed, but his restraint is impressive. These buttons and switches seem to be lacking more buttons and switches. The art in the World of Edena is simple. Except for where he messes up and accidentally draws every individual tree. Maybe you don't like art and need to hear the story to be convinced that this book is cool. The World of Edena has 5 chapters: Upon a Star, Gardens of Edena, The Goddess, Stell, and SRA. Our main characters are Stell and Atan, who later becomes Atana. They live so far in the future that humanity takes hormones and makes them androgynous. It's really neat. And now for a speed run through the world of Edena. Chapter 1, Upon a Star. In Upon a Star, we meet Stell and Atan, who crash land on a planet they deemed Pool Ball. Pool Ball has a giant pyramid that has been collecting intelligent life forms to take them to Edena. Stell happens to be the perfect pilot and gets everyone to Edena safely. Chapter 2, The Gardens of Edena. In the Gardens of Edena, Stell and Atan learn how to survive in an organic setting. They lose their androgynous form and become distinctly male and female. Stell tries to have sex with Atan, and Atan knocks him out and runs away. When he wakes up, Atan regrets his actions and attempts to find Atan. Stell meets a character called Master Berg, who helps him find Atan and tells him to stop falling asleep next to lions. After they reunited, Stell and the newly named Atana decide to make love. This is interrupted by a giant green alien called the Dream Shadow, who captures Atana. Chapter 3, The Goddess. In The Goddess, we follow Atana. She sees a large explosion and goes to investigate, where she is captured by people in long-nosed suits. The evil Dream Shadow harasses her, and she wakes up in a similar long-nosed suit. She gets shot, uses it as an illegal science experiment, escapes down a chute inside of a cremation oven, meets a blind kid who can astral project, and overthrows the Paternum, who is the same Dream Shadow from earlier, and subsequently gets thrown in a dream maze. Chapter 4, Stell. Stell meets Master Berg again, who tells him about Atana and goes to help her. He meets some friendly characters who belong to the same long-nosed people. He helps them get their ship started, gets thrown into a cell, and we find out that Paternum isn't dead. We then meet Trollopin, who is a former friend, and learn he killed Berg. Trollopin rips Stell's brain out, and the next chapter starts. Chapter 5, SRA. For some reason, Stell is wandering a large desert and finds a small city. Trollopin is controlled by the Paternum. Stell still hasn't found Atana, but he's working on it. He falls asleep and wakes up in a dream on a planet. And on Planet Strange, he almost manages to save Berg, and he finds Atana, who is about to be killed. Stell is stabbed, and Atana's head is severed. Stell wakes up for the 100th time and turns into a monster and bites the Paternum head off, and then wakes up for the final time in his actual spaceship. The whole entire story was a fever dream caused by a virus outbreak, so the entire book is a waste of paper. What a lousy ending. At least all the random changes between realities can now be justified. Atana was just the ship's sexy AI computer, too. Let's pretend you're still not convinced and need me to show you the themes and concepts that were explored in the world of Edena. First off, gender and sexuality. It's an old French comic, so it doesn't have the same views about gender and sexuality we do today, but that doesn't make it bad. Stell and Atan begin as completely androgynous with no sexual desire or feelings, because humanity has advanced beyond the need for either. Super cool concept. They land on Edena and lose touch with the rest of humanity, and their bodies change drastically. Luckily for them, they love the changes. My next point is conformity versus expression. The idea of taking hormones to remain androgynous is incredibly fascinating. These characters are also eating synthesized food, replacing their organs consistently, and getting rid of body hair. But it's fascinating wondering how these practices came into place. These things were societal expectations. The people who wore the long-nosed suits were also following a societal expectation set in place by the totalitarian Paternum. The Paternum was a ruler over the long-nosed people, and Stell and Atana directly opposed it. Perhaps in this way, they represented the sexual revolution of the 60s and 80s, but though it's just simply theoretical. I wanted to include religion as well, because I think that's interesting how many references there are to the Catholic religion or Christian religion in all types of art. Stell and Atana are Adam and Eve characters, and the book is literally called The World of Edena, or The World of Eden, but it's kind of obvious, but it's really neat, and I wanted to point it out. And the last brief point I wanted to make is it's about the subconscious. The subconscious is very heavy in the world of Edena. Stell and Atana's abilities had to do with the mind, and so did the abilities of that random blind kid. Not forgetting Berg, who could also control reality. Looking at the book backwards, Stell's dreams make a lot of sense. He works on a ship that crashed into Pool Ball. Trollopin in the Paternum looks like his boss, and he has a crush on his computer. His brain scrambled everything together into an exciting adventure story. I love everything about this book except its crap ending, but even the ending adds to its charm and excitement. If you still don't agree that the world of Edena is a cool and fascinating story, you're simply hard to please. Thank you.